out. So without wasting any more time, let's get down to the feature match area. It is time for the semi-finals here at GP Prague. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world, wherever you are, to the semi-finals here at GP Prague. A great pleasure to have your company and welcome you to the booth once again. My name's Riley Knight, and of course I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Simon Goetzen, the Pro Tour champion. On your screens, my friends, just two of the four remaining players here at GP Prague. These two, Yusuf Kemal-Vifa and Fabian Friedrich, they have crushed their enemies and seen them driven before them in their path up to the semi-finals, and now they are getting underway, trying to snag a spot in that final match here. So Fabian Friedrich off to a good start with the Druid of the Cowl on turn 2. Yusuf Kemal-Vifa, on the other hand, he's beginning with an Aegis Automaton. Druid of the Cowl, a nice way to power out some early action here for Friedrich.
Yeah, we've seen that accelerate into a 4-drop so many times, but this time it doesn't look like Fabian has something to accelerate into.
Vifa also hiding up at the top of his battlefield there, a universal solvent, a little bit of a throwback to the old D&D artifacts that you can find in your mystical journeys there. This card, it only costs 1, but you have to pay 7 and sacrifice it to destroy a target permanent. One of the most expensive Vindicate effects we've seen in a long time, Simon.
Yeah, the question here is, does Yusuf have some kind of synergy with the solvent? Is he going to be able to benefit from this being in play? Because otherwise, I also like delaying this kind of card as long as possible, so that the opponent doesn't know that you have such a powerful removal effect available.
SRAM number 1 coming down here for Kemal-Vifa. The senior edificer going to make his mark on the game here, as Vifa is instructed to lay out his lands like a normal person. In front of him with the spells just in front of them. But the Universal Solvent as well, I mean, a very powerful effect, but as you say, not something that, it's very easy to anticipate it when you play it on turn 1. You can sit there and wait for your opponent to be able to destroy it. But you can't deny a very, very powerful effect and get rid of everything, even Sovereign Glue. These references lost on the ignoramus sitting next to me, who has no idea about Dungeons & Dragons, probably never rolled a D10 in your life.
Exactly.
Over to a scrounging Bandar now.
So much work. This cat monk is... It looks like your regular 2-mana 2/2 with some ability that you find in almost every limited format, but somehow it's always relevant.
Yeah, there are a lot of synergies that go along with it. I mean, we've seen insane decks throughout the day in the hands of people like Christian Calcano, who was putting up to 3 counters per creature, per trigger there, thanks to his Winding Constrictors now. But any way you slice it, the Bandar has done really good work. Revoke Privileges coming down now to stymie Friedrich's plans here.
And this does 2 things at the same time. It makes sure that the Bandar doesn't get counters due to the trigger. And also Yusuf's drawing cards when he casts Aura, so he kind of wants to get those out of his hand as long as his legendary creature is still alive.
Yeah, so SRAM, the senior edificer, is going to reward Vifa for playing cards like Revoke Privileges. Vifa wouldn't be getting that off something like a Thopter Arrest, but Revoke Privileges is a nice way for Vifa to keep the cards flowing. Vifa with 4 cards in hand now. Both players thinking about how this match is going to unfold. Still very much in the early days of this game developing. You can see an Aetherstream Leopard has joined the battlefield for Friedrich here. And I want to chat to you a little bit about this card, Simon, because I tell you what, it's done a whole lot of work this tournament, huh?
And we've actually seen it grow by exactly this one counter a lot of times. Many times it just makes a huge difference in this format if you suddenly go up to 4 toughness. Most creatures that you can get for normal raid have between 2 and 3 power. So this is the critical point at which defenders, in which players will have to start double blocking.
I mean, even a card like Bricata Club Security, a pretty unimpressive 4-drop in a previous format, actually does stand up really well to a lot of the questions that your opponents are going to ask of you. 2 3s and 3 2s all over the place in this new Aether Revolt format.
Yeah, we see flyers being really good in this format. We see combo tricks being really good in this format, and you don't need to have the most massive creatures because the servers are running around. But you want the high toughness creatures, and I think trample is one of the best mechanics to have.
Yeah, so many ways for players to beef up their creatures in combat. We see keywords like trample, first strike as well at an absolute premium with the number of so much creature removal is happening in combat. You know, there aren't such the removal spells in Aether Revolt are very good, but that's not where we're seeing a lot of them.
Yeah, Fabian looks like he's baiting out a block here. This attack at the first look doesn't look very promising.
So now we're going to see here a High Spire Infusion. It's going to generate some energy for Friedrich and also clear away that Senior Edificer here.
That's a nice interaction because he does make sure that the Leopard will be able to be pumped again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And also he deals with a creature that is really difficult to evaluate. You don't know if Yusuf's hand is maybe just more vehicles, more auras, and you just don't want to risk it.
Actually, that's a great point. You don't really think about that. The fact that, you know, you could be playing against an opponent who's just stacked their deck full of the cards that are going to pay you off when you've got a SRAM. We have the advantage of the deck lists in front of us. And I can tell you, not so many. Zero vehicles in this gentleman's deck. Caught in the Brights, the second, another aura that's going to come down, however. That would have snagged FIFA another card.
Exactly. So if he was holding that card already, maybe he should have been a bit more careful with his creature.
As it is, though, SRAM hits the bin. Caught in the Brights is going to keep the Aether Stream Leopard to the sidelines, just like the Skyship Plunderer there to the bottom of your screen. Hiding out down south under the revoked privileges. Another flavor win there. But here is an Aether Herder. We've seen these Aether creatures, you know, the cycle of them, the Aether Herder, the Aether Chase, the Aether Swooper, Aether Poisoner. All of them have done a good job, with the poor old exception of old mate Aether Inspector. He hasn't had a good time so far.
But 4 out of 5 is not a bad deal.
No?
All of those are... actually, Aether Herder is probably also at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, definitely. I would say so.
I would say the red, black, and blue ones are being picked up quite early.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Jeremy Desani very aggressively picking Aether Swoopers over cards like Caught in the Brights earlier on today. But for Vifa, he's got a much more impressive card, and also part of a cycle here in Thriving Ibex.
Greatest of all time. That's just undeniable.
Yeah, of all the thriving creatures. Yeah. I can see that point being easily defensible here, as you see that this creature, as a 3 mana, essentially so much of the time a 3/5, a 4 mana, 3/5. This card really gets it done.
The earlier it comes down, the more likely you are able to actually trigger it. In a lot of these games, if the game set has already progressed to a point where you can't really attack with a 3/5, you will have to be content with a 2/4 defender.
And something you pointed out before, Zimon, that creatures with high toughness are at such a premium in this format because of the fact you can attack and block.
Absolutely.
Aegis Automaton, locking down that Druid of the Cowl. Friedrich hasn't used too many mana from the Druid of the Cowl so far.
No, it has been a great attacker, though.
Yeah, it's really gotten in there, huh? Bastion Inventor coming down, 2 copies of this in his deck. 4 mana... a 4/4 hexproof. Cost Friedrich just 5 mana thanks to that servo powering out the last mana for the improvise. But look at this, it's a multi-form wonder.
That's a great card, of course.
Well, when you got 5 energy in your reserve, it certainly is 3 extra energy being brought along by the wonder. But as a 3/3, you can gain Flying Vigilance or Lifelink and can hit very hard in the air for 5. I mean, you get 1 hit in with Flying and Lifelink, and you're in business.
Absolutely, and we've seen how good Lifelink is in these kind of race situations.
Yeah.
You can claw your way back, even though the board state without your Lifelink creature is basically lost.
Thinking back over the weekend, Zimon, I think that it's an excellent observation you make. Every time we've seen a Lifelink creature played, it's always had an impact.
Yes.
You know, the speed of this format means that cards like Aethersphere Harvester, Aerial Responder, Gifted Aetherborn, all of these cards really get it done, you know, buffering your life total and giving you more room to breathe, especially against the aggressive decks.
And then you combine it with the combo tricks or the +1/+1 counters, and then things get really out of hand. What is it? Aetherborn Marauder? I've seen this so many times, be a 6/6, a 7/7.
We've seen some huge Aetherborn Marauders throughout this weekend. Speaking of huge creatures, here's the attack from Friedrich. Getting in with the Aether Herder as well as this Bastion Inventor. It's a big attack now, attacking in for 8. Looks like it might be time for this Aegis Automaton to hit the bin. You've served bravely, my droid friend.
That's not a block you're happy to make, not getting your two strongest creatures are not partaking in the fight because you don't really have an attractive block, and this is something which is easy to overlook with the Multiform Wonder. It's not that easy to brawl with other creatures.
No, it's one of those creatures that when uncontested completely overtakes a game. But Friedrich now also playing his second Bastion Inventor. These guys have got hexproof. They're not going anywhere. And we see a follow-up play of the Narnum Renegade. It's going to hold down the ground pretty nicely here for the German. And Vifa, what can he find?
I think Vifa might have wanted to invest a point of energy there just to prevent 4 damage to him. Using the Multiform Wanderer defensively, which is
sure.
Not what you usually want to do, but this is nice.
Yeah, check this out. So this is going to mean that there's going to be a nice attack here, I imagine, in the air. It's going to cause use of Kemel Vifa to gain a little bit of extra life here, thanks to the fact that the Multiform Wanderer will be getting across for 6.
But the Death Touch creature, basically the perfect answer. Otherwise, the Ibex would have gotten in and would have been able to grow to a 5 toughness creature, exactly what Yusuf is missing.
So unfortunately for Vifa here, Friedrich does have the board locked down with the Narnum Renegade. But this Multiform Wonder is going to fling itself up into the air, I imagine, and get across for 6. That's going to be a nice little buffer for Vifa here as he goes back up to 11.
For 6 or more, right? It could be. We could give it flying, lifelink. That's 2 energy, and then we could pump it twice.
So with each pump, it gets +2/-2.
Ah, okay, no, because it's only a 4/4. I was dreaming
of a white Christmas.
9/1 Wanderers, but not happening. Not yet.
Not yet, indeed, no. As the Multiform Wonder takes to the skies. Probably attacking here as a 6/2, I imagine. Get that confirmed as soon as that attack goes through. Looks like it's back to Friedrich. And yes, indeed, there you go. That shift in the life total. So Vifa gets himself back into it. The Turk finding some breathing room here against the German. As Friedrich considers his next move.
Yusuf is 1 mana away from dissolving.
Yeah.
One of Fabian's creatures. Not the hexproof ones though.
No, those guys are here to stay. A bit of a clunky creature, really, a 6 mana 4/4, but we've seen Friedrich put them to good use, especially with those servo tokens helping with a discount on the mana.
Yeah, and that's, even though he's not really an artifact deck, he's still happy to have those. Just the off chance that you might reduce their cost by 1 or 2 mana makes them really potent threats.
There's not a lot that kills them as well. There's so much targeted removal, especially from white and from black as well. There's not a lot that kills them. With the hexproof meaning that they're basically untargetable, you know that you're going to have at least a little bit of safety. You can get your combat tricks happening as well. Friedrich now with a pretty stacked board. He's going to send in the team. Looks like a couple of tokens may stick back along with that Druid of the Cal here.
You can tell how far he's ahead by the fact that he's attacking with a 1-power Death Touch creature.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, much more impactful on defense.
Yeah, so much more. Just a little removal spell in waiting. The old Seal of Doom impression done so often by the Narnum Renegade. But now, Vifa is the one on the defensive. And he's going to have to find a way through this little tangle. Not an easy one, of course. Friedrich attacking here for 15. Multiform Wonder put on defense here. And a double block with his other white creatures for Vifa.
See, yeah, he's going to kill another hexproof, or make sure that he kills a hexproof creature here with this double block. Doesn't want to hit that 7th land and not be able to kill one of Fabian's large creatures. So
we're going to see an activation of the Multiform Wonder here. I imagine it's going to be uptown or downtown, all the way around town here.
There are two I think there are two viable options. You could also just make it a 5-1 lifelink.
Yeah.
I actually like that better because the other line of play, basically you deplete your energy over time,
Yeah.
and you still have the lesser creature.
It's just sitting there as a 3/3, but I like this. I think that's the route that Viva's taken as well. Certainly it would have been the one that I would have taken here, gaining an extra 5 life and clearing, of course, the 4/4.
Both in fact. So no more hexproof creatures to worry about.
Well, that's how you beat them there. We see that very tidily done here by Vifa. He's keeping his head above water, if only barely, as he gains 5 and takes, if I'm not mistaken, another 5. So his life total remains the same. And here's the follow-up play from Friedrich.
Yusuf not thrilled to see the leopard.
And another beater here. Can trample over for 4 more damage next turn. Can't quite see how much energy in Friedrich's reserve here.
It's one. I think he used up all of it for the servos, and just now got a single one.
Yeah, you see Aetherstream Leopard, a card that's really impressed us this weekend, hasn't it, Simon?
Yes, and once again it comes down to having 4 power. So Fabian managed his board in such a way that all his creatures were threatening to kill 4 toughness creatures, and Yusuf just never had the right cards to block with.
Here's another buffer now for Vifa. Again, as a 3/3, it doesn't line up against the 4/4s of the world.
Exactly, and then all the life gain in the world is not gonna solve this problem.
And here's a renegade. A restoration specialist. Restoration specialist, a card that's had a bit of a quiet weekend. Would you agree, Simon?
I think this is the first time I'm seeing it. Maybe the second time.
Maybe we've seen. I think we've seen it hiding out in the hands of a couple of players earlier on. But I guess as an uncommon, you can see it there on your screen, returning up to 1 artifact and 1 enchantment from the graveyard. And Vifa might be happy to cash that in to snag back his little multi-form wonder there. Both of his enchantments still on the battlefield, of course.
Exactly. The both revoke privileges and call in the brides have not left the battlefield.
But if they do, ooh, the value.
Fabian is now in the tank. Yusuf has added quite a lot to the board, is also threatening the 7-mana activation. This takes a little bit of time to figure out all the possible blocks, because now Yusuf does have double blocks that are quite good. I like staying aggressive here. I think that's the right approach. And Yusuf is in a much more difficult position. How do you block these creatures? Can you afford to take some extra damage to maybe make the more profitable blocks and so on?
So Friedrich doesn't spend too much time thinking about it. He turns them sideways. And Vifa now has to find a way through this combat step. He's done well to get his head back above water. He's back up to 14 life. He was down to 6 at one point. It might have been even lower. So, here are the blocks. Looks like the Reservoir Walker is getting in front of the Leopard here. And a servo is going to get eaten up for dinner by the Ibex. Damage goes through. And we see the dust settle on a much reduced board here.
Mm-hmm.
So Vifa takes 6.
And Vifa really wants to get that wonder back and basically continue the plays he's made before.
Yeah, interesting to see where he's stuck that restoration specialist off to the side, like it's a utility, not like it's not a creature at all. He's doing the old Llanowar elves hidden among the lands trick here. But Fabian Friedrich is not to be bamboozled here, as he has a look at the restoration specialist. So important to ensure you're not bamboozled these days. Here's a Lifecraft Cavalry coming down as a 6/6. That's a nice one here for Friedrich. More pressure for him.
And especially nice to have attack with the servos, so that he made sure, almost guaranteed, that one of his creatures would go to the graveyard.
So check this out. Vifa, with 8 lands, has enough now to activate the Universal Solvent, dissolve some problematic permanent on Friedrich's side.
Maybe a 6/6 trample.
Maybe a 6/6 trample. Probably a 6/6 trample, in fact. But he's also got enough mana here to block with the to block with the Restoration Specialist and cash it in for this multiform wonder. Or should he choose to, he could even get back the Solvent. Another 8 mana Vindicate. And he's really, really not hiding his plans here. I mean, they are pretty clearly telegraphed, but he's just, oh, mate. Oh, dear, look at this.
Yusuf is a great guy.
Yeah.
He's just really enjoying all the experiences he's getting from Magic, including, of course, the matches, but also the travel, the time with his friends. It's a delight to meet him at all these GPs.
A bastion of Turkish magic, it's fair to say. Once again, has represented Turkey every year for the last, I don't know how long, really, since I was in primary school. Here's the restoration specialist on blocking duty. I think we're going to see her hit the bin before too much longer. Looks like she's strangling that peacock. Jeez. Asphyxiation specialist by the look of things here. And Universal Solvent is going to dissolve that cavalry. Ooh, does Fabian have something to say about this, perhaps? Yes, indeed he does. He's going to leave it in the dust, return it to his hand, draw a card. That is a good trade in mana here. Vifa spent 8 mana on that activation and the casting the spell itself, and Friedrich has returned the card without losing anything here. He's the left in the leave in the dust. It replaced itself.
But he also basically spent his whole turn to make this kind of move. So ultimately, they are kind of trading the same resources mana-wise. And I'm not sure how threatening this next card is going to be, the cavalry is going to be, when Yusuf already knows about it. It becomes a bit harder to trigger revolt if Yusuf doesn't want that to happen.
Merchant's Dockhand, the follow-up play here for Friedrich. Vifa now does have the multiform wonder after snagging it back with that restoration specialist. We did see that activated at the end of turn. Or after the block, I should say. And
an impressive 6 energy available.
Yeah, so once again, a nice buffer here for Vifa's life total. Friedrich is a little frustrated here as this game drags out. He has felt in control of it for a long time here. Hasn't played a 6th land as well. How about that?
Oh, if you don't need it.
So, Friedrich now, ball in his court. And what can he do to further his position in this game? Got an update from our other table. We can announce now our first finalist here at GP Prague, and I'm sure fans of the Brazilian superstar around the world will be very, very pleased to hear that Paulo Vitor Dama da Rosa will be making a finals appearance here at GP Prague. He manages to take down his opponent here in straight sets. Rupa Metza taken down without any hesitation by the Hall of Famer. So looking forward to seeing some more magic from Paulo Vitor Dama da Rosa before very much longer. However, we still have to find out who his opponent is going to be. Yusuf Kemal Vifa out of Turkey here on the left-hand side of your screen, treading water desperately as Fabian Friedrich is doing all he can to push his nose ahead. Multiform Wonder getting involved with some more blocks here. And the Thriving Ibex is going to be chucked in front of this Druid of the Cow.
And Yusuf might now go for a line of play where he doesn't kill any of Fabian's creatures.
This would be the way to keep that the impact of that Lifecraft Cavalry to an absolute minimum.
Yeah, and that's what I alluded to earlier. If you know that it's Lifecraft Cavalry in the opponent's hand, that certainly affects your blocking decisions.
So we can't quite see exactly how much energy is being paid here by Vifa as that die is just tantalizingly off screen here. Oh, with a change in camera angle, we can see now 4 energy left in the reserve of Vifa here. So he's paid 2.
That's quite surprising. I figured we would see a -2 +2 activation, but getting a single point of life doesn't really seem to be worth a full energy counter.
Yeah, it doesn't warrant the energy counter for you there. Well, in any case, that's the way that Vifa has chosen to play this one here. Friedrich working out what his response is.
I'm still trying to figure out what I think of the dockhand.
Yeah, we haven't seen it do more than poke in for a point or 2 of damage and then jump a 3/2 or something.
I think it has crewed a vehicle every once in a while, but the actual text on the card hasn't been relevant.
No, I don't think we've seen a single activation all weekend. Vifa here now with an Ether Herder of his own. That's going to buff up his energy reserve. There is Merchant Stockhand on the battlefield, on the battlefield, and on the card viewer there. And Friedrich, without any real way to take advantage of the ability anyway, even if he had the 4 mana lying around, and he hasn't had a lot of mana left over.
Oh, so we have to do a little bit of deduction here, but if Yusuf is paying 4 energy, let's see.
Flying,
Vigilance,
lifelink,
lifelink,
vigilance.
+2/+0, +2 -2.
Like a symphony.
Okay, every ability once.
Yeah. Yep, just the Grand Tour here for the Multiform Wonder. Knocks Friedrich down to 9 and Vifa up to 11 here. This Multiform Wonder has really done, it's done a double shift, hasn't it? Pima outright the play here for Vifa, as we see, a 3/3 trample. He can make it a 4/4 trample if he so chooses, or snag himself a little servo token, but no, 4/4 it is.
Yes, and he really, that's all he wants, right? He needs 4/4 creatures to trade with his opponent's 4/4 creatures. There's no need to be playing around.
Ether Herder for Friedrich, possessing that +1/+1 counter, is a little bit better than Vifa's here. It's just a 3/3. Is Vifa out of cards? I feel like he has he's hellbent here. Looks like Friedrich is still holding on to 1, and that'd be that Lifecraft Cavalry. Oh no, it's been redeployed. Excuse me.
That's the new card he just drew.
Okay.
For this turn. The cavalry was deployed, but without revolt.
Mm-hmm. Vifa playing around that, of course, by activating his Multiform Wonder by going downstairs.
Maybe Fabian could have gotten in 1 more point of damage with his servo token last turn, because he kind of knew that Vifa wasn't going to block.
Well, look at this. Talk about an absolute barnstormer here. This one is going to break this game wide open. Friedrich with some important decisions to make here, and look at that awry smile playing upon the face of Vifa here, as Friedrich considers exactly where these +1/+1 counters are going to go. Simon, an interesting set of decisions for Friedrich to make here. He's got some tramplers, he's got some ways to push through damage, but he's got to distribute these counters optimally to make sure he gives himself the absolute best chance of winning.
Yes, and 4 counters on distributed arbitrarily. That's so many different options. I'm quite sure that we can exclude the Death Touch creature, because it already trades for a single creature on the opposing side. If you put a counter on it, it will not really benefit that much. Maybe if you want to put 2 on it, at least then it wouldn't trade for the Ether Herder anymore. But I think you want to really make your bigger creatures just a little bit bigger, because we've seen that Vifa had trouble with 4/4s, but if you can now make most of your creatures 5/5s, then Yusuf will have a similar problem again.
So Friedrich here, deep in the tank here, as he considers his move. It's going to be 3 on the cavalry, and 1 on the Death Touch creature here, the Narnum Renegade. So with the Verdurous Gearhulk trigger fully resolved, in comes the cavalry, charging over the hill. And now it's up to Vifa. What can he find here? The Multiform Wonder still good for 2 activations here for the Turk. But now with that Pima Outrider at a 4/4 and the Thriving Ibex as a 2/4, in addition to the Ether Herder there as a 3/3, how do his creatures line up against Friedrich's here?
Yes, and of course Friedrich contemplated exactly this question. I don't think there's a way to double block the 7/7 profitably. No, that's just not going to happen. So that's a good power and toughness combination. The best block of a 2/3 Death Touch seems to be the 3/3. That's just natural. But if you don't have the resources to block it right now, it might be better just to take it to prevent more damage from the other creatures.
So the attack once again from Friedrich is a 7/7, a 2/3, and a 4/4 here. Vifa with a multitude of creatures with which he can block. How is he going to leverage these creatures to get through this combat step as advantageously as possible? That remains to be seen. We're going to see a double block on the 7/7, so 7 power lining up against 7 toughness there. And we're seeing 5 power lining up against 4 toughness with the block on the Ether Herder.
Yeah, and just like I was saying, this is a block that lines up well for the big creatures, but it does mean that the smaller Death Touch creature gets through, which is I think a very good block by Yusuf, considering the circumstances.
Now the final question for you, Simon, here is: are you activating the Ether Form 1 to twice more to gain 5 points of life?
I think I only activate Lifelink, and that's because you're battling with a trampled creature.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so it amounts to the same.
Yeah, you would just be losing a point of energy.
All right. Looks like Vif has been tuned into that, and he's going to activate the lifelink ability. So we're going to see 2 points of damage come across, and with Vifa gaining 3 life, it's going to be a net gain, a positive end result for Vifa here as he goes up to 12. And figuring out which of those blockers was declared first, and it seems like the Ether Herders are going to trade against each other. And after the dust has settled, we have a Nanam Renegade on the side of Friedrich, in addition to a Servo Token, a Merchant Dockhand. Oh, and let's not forget Simon Gertzen, that Verdurous Gearhulk. That's still sitting there.
That was, of course, a tremendous top deck by Fabian Friedrich. I don't think the Dockhand will even be necessary, but that could also now start generating some form of advantage here.
So, Friedrich reorganizing his permanents here as we see him draw for the turn. I think he just drew an island there.
Agreed.
So not such a stanky top deck after, of course. I mean, after that Verdurous Gearhulk, I think he's out of top deck juice. As we move now to attacks. Friedrich firmly on the front foot here, attacking with everything but the servo left behind. We may see an activation of the Dockhand, as you mentioned, Simon.
Finally.
We've waited so long. Vifa chucks the Ibex in the way of the Druid and takes 6 down to 6. Friedrich is getting closer here. With an island in hand, he doesn't have a lot of action, but Vifa passed the turn without having done anything, without having cast anything, so he might be sitting on the stone nothing as well. Mismatched basic lands for Vifa, one of the very few tactical errors he's made in this game. With 1 mana, what could this be? It's not another Universal Solvent. It's a Prey Upon, okay. Alright, so the Ibex is going to kill off the Merchant's Dockhand, and ladies and gentlemen, before your very eyes, for our next trick, an activation of Merchant Dockhand's ability. You saw it here first, my friends. The top card, is it an artifact? Big money. Oh, I mean, very good. You do have to reveal it, my friend.
No, you just take one.
Oh, you just take one. I thought it was only artifacts.
No, it's not. It's actually quite good once it gets going.
That's not too bad at all. I thought it was a sort of Glinton-esque crane type situation. I guess it is written on the card what it does. Perhaps I should read it. May help me with a thing or two.
The problem, of course, the Prey Upon on Merchant's Dock and not really changing things for Yusuf, who is now already chomp blocking here.
So Friedrich has to once again get on the front foot with Vifa forced into blocking there. And away goes the thriving Ibex, meaning that Friedrich is in, once again, a very commanding position. He's going to play a module here, Decoction module, if I'm not mistaken. The one on the screw, the one with the screw on the side, Decoction module. Ding. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Also nice synergy with Verdurous Gearhulk.
Yeah. Also enjoying a spicy chicken dinner tonight is Fabian Friedrich taking out game number 1. Congratulations to him. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see the fabrication module the decoction module really going ham here because Vifa recognizes the game is up and these guys are going to hit the sideboards for game number 2, Zimon. Pretty impressive stuff by Vifa, though. He kept his head in the game a lot longer than we anticipated. That onslaught from Friedrich was pretty unstoppable, really.
Yeah, and he really milked the Multiform Wonder to full effect. He had a window, I believe, where he was very close to turning the game around. Just that Fabian's creatures were so big that he just couldn't really race it, even with 10-point life swings. But those do cost 4 points of energy, so they're not quite free.
No, and I think it's very easy to look at a game like that and go, Friedrich drawing like a maniac, ripping pepperoni off the top of his library. Obviously, the Verdurous Gearhulk did help him push that game over the top, but I think he was just in a position where, things were going his way, that the tide was turning in a way that he was on track to win that game, but Vifa just continually, putting out obstacles in the way. But anyway, you slice it. I think Friedrich had that one wrapped up. It just was a matter of putting the bow on the whole thing.
If Vifa has some more 5+ toughness creatures in his sideboard, that might be a really smart move, because those 4/4s have been his bane in this particular game.
Well, looking through his list here, there are some interesting cards he didn't choose to include. There are no copies of Countless Gears Renegade, despite him drafting 2 of them. Audacious Infiltrator, Bastion Enforcer, both options that he hasn't chosen to go with. The Audacious Infiltrator, pretty good on defense, but again, he's wanting to get up to that 4 toughness or that 4 power so he can hold off the 4 toughness creatures.
Maybe some green creatures in his sideboard left, or big artifacts.
He's playing every single green card that he drafted with the exception of Wild Wanderer. And this isn't really the deck for Wild Wanderer.
No, it's entirely possible that he just doesn't have these kind of options to transform his deck a little bit.
No.
And he, of course, can also just be a bit more proactive. I'm just concerned that if Friedrich has again these 4/4 hexproof creatures, maybe put some counters on them, Yusuf's deck doesn't seem equipped to deal with them.
Well, Friedrich does have some options if this game is going to go a bit longer. He can bring in things like the Reverse Engineer that's sitting in his sideboard. That's going to be a way for him to recoup some cards, and that would have been a spicy rip as well through that game, just refueling the hand there. Other options include, not a huge amount. There's Aradara Express if you want some harder, heavy hitters, but your face is screwing up there, Zimon, and I agree with that assessment. Not the greatest thing. I don't know. There's not a huge amount that's really leaping out at me off the page in front of me. Consular Turret obviously not amongst it. Verdant Automaton left in the sideboard. 2 copies of Silkweaver Elite, 2 copies of Unbridled Growth, Natural Obsolescence. These are the cards that are sitting in the sideboard of Fabian Friedrich, but none of them really jump out at me here.
No, absolutely agreed. He does have a pacification array already in the main deck. That could be absolutely huge, because Yusuf's defenses were always very reliant on a single key creature.
Zimon, we've seen some pretty bonkers decks today, to be honest. We've seen some stuff that's been really impressive up and down the top tables of GP Prague, and I have to say, and I hope this observation isn't sort of too negative, but these guys' decks just aren't that impressive. They've got some bombs, they've got some stuff in there that's going to do a lot of work, but at no point are our jaws hitting the floor and we're going, geez, look at how these decks have come together. I
agree, especially Yusuf's deck. The cards he's played, if you just ask your short-term memory what you remember, I remember Multiform Wonder.
Yeah.
That's the card that really impressed me.
That's it. There was the Thriving Ibex that did a bit of work and some other stuff there. But yeah, shrug, right? It's just nothing that's making us really think, wow, this guy has just put together this amazing deck. It's a testament to his skill as a player that he's managed to get all the way to the top 8 and to the semi-finals, indeed, with a deck that perhaps isn't the best one we've ever seen. But all the same, these guys are not they haven't come to play with the tools that we expect from a top 8 GP deck.
Whereas on Fabian Friedrich's side, I have to say I think the deck is more powerful than it appears on the surface.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit of this deceptively powerful, and that's because it kind of breaks the format in a very subtle way with the sheer size of the creatures that he's putting out. Not many decks are equipped to really trade with 2, 3, 4 creatures,
Yeah, I can see that. We saw the Bastion Inventors, we saw stuff like Aetherstream Leopard. He's got 2 of both of those cards. But then, as you go through the list, you see Riparian Tiger, you see Verdurous Gearhulk, you see all these cards that, do put up a fair bit of beef. We saw Lifecraft Cavalry coming down as a 6/6 as well. So, in a vacuum, I guess, are we headed towards Friedrich as kind of having the edge here just on card quality alone?
Yes, I would definitely say so, and that's also one thing I wanted to touch upon. Multiform Wonder is not some kind of unbeatable bomb. It's
good.
It's a card you're always happy to have,
Mm.
and it's colorless, so of course it's a super high draft pick. But if you play it, if you have to play against it, there are always ways to play around it, to integrate it into your game plan, so that you still have a very good shot at winning.
I think that's a good point. Ultimately, it's not one of these absolute dominating rares that really warp an entire game around. It's a real role player. I think one of the things that's important to identify is it's hungry, eh? It eats through that energy like there's no tomorrow. Just chomps it up for breakfast.
And that's what makes it so balanced.
Mm.
Also, you don't get a super only upside effect like +2/+2, right? If you pump it in power, you lose the toughness. So there is no real way to just dominate all creatures on the battlefield.
To just think about it from, I know we're heading into game number 2 here, but just another thing on Multiform Wonder. You think about if those abilities cost mana, the card would be so much better.
Yeah.
So much better because there's no end to how long. I mean, you can't produce just energy after energy after energy unless your deck is specifically set up to do that. Whereas if you're paying 1 or even 2 mana to activate those abilities, that card just keeps going, keeps gaining 5 life every turn, more or less uncontested. Gearshift Ace, the first play on the side of Vifa here, but it's answered by Friedrich's Druid of the Cow. We can see, Yusuf Kemal Vifa up to his old tricks. Look at that. Putting his lands on the side of the battlefield. We'll see how long he can get away with that before the table judge has something to say about it. He's sneaky. He's playing tricks with us here, Vifa, as he plays a Scrounging Bandar as well. Gearshift Ace staying back on defense here. Not very good in the face of the Druid of the Cow. No vehicles for Vifa to power up with the Gearshift Ace, Simon.
No, maybe a 4-drop this time by Fabian.
Ooh, says go. That's not great, but the Gearshift Ace is certainly going to be a lot better here as it becomes a 3/2 first strike. That's going to tussle a lot more strongly with Old Mate Druid of the Cow here.
But Yusuf has to be careful. He's green-white, so Fabian will not be too afraid of removal, especially instant speed removal. So combat tricks are an issue. Also, return target permanent to its owner's hand, draw a card. Fabian does have 4 untapped mana, and I'm not sure if that's actually worth the 3 damage here. I would have been a bit more careful with that decision.
We did see Friedrich leave some things in the dust in the previous game. Here's SRAM, Senior Edificer. So this is the second one in Vifa's deck. He does have 2 copies of them. Not a huge amount of payoff cards as we've already discussed. We saw the 2 auras in Vifa's deck already. And here's 4 mana. And we're going to leave this Gearshift Ace in the dust. So Friedrich takes the 3 damage and then more or less deletes a power and toughness of it by getting rid of that +1/+1 counter. And also drawing a card. So he's going to continue to churn through his deck.
I think he could have cast that already before combat, before damage, because the probability that Vifa was playing something more potent for 3 or 4 mana than a 3/2 first striker, I think was quite low.
Okay, that's a great point to think about. That obviously, the sort of the default play is to wait until the end of turn, see what the best threat on the battlefield is. But yeah, a 3/2 first strike is no joke, and I think Friedrich should have thought longer there about getting rid of that one. We see Decoction module come down now. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you can gain an energy counter, and you can return a creature that you control to your hand by using its second ability. We haven't seen Friedrich with a lot of outlets for his energy so far. And Vifa looks happy enough to just put this module out of commission here. No revolt or anything, just decommissioning the module here. Interesting choice there, rather than deploying the Gearshift Ace again. I guess it doesn't do too much in the face of the Druid of the Cow. Inventor's Goggles comes down now.
Okay, now we've really reached the stage where the power level of both of these decks does not look too thrilling.
No, Inventor's Goggles again. You can miser the odd free equip on some of the artificers in the set, but look at this: revoke privileges on the Druid of the Cow.
Draw a card.
Oh yeah, off of SRAM. There we go. Ding, ding, ding. And SRAM gets in for 2 again now that this Druid can't attack, or can't block, I should say. And with it comes the Scrounging Banda. 2 mana more, and it's going to be the Gear Shift Ace we saw left in the dust beforehand. So Friedrich now checks in with the top of his library. What can he find? What can he get? What can he get going here, Simon?
4/4 hexproof.
4/4 hexproof for 6 here. We saw these cards do a lot of work, tearing apart the board of Vifa in the last game.
How about tapping your Inventor's Goggle to pay?
Oh, look at
1
that
less.
spicy, spicy tech. And let's check this very quickly. We've got a creature type check alert, Simon Gertzen. It is indeed
Vedalken Artificer.
a Vidalcan Artificer. So that's a free equip. Viva can't believe it. Hang on, what's going on here, mate? What's going on here?
Fabian can't believe it either.
No, no one
So
can
much
believe it, ladies
value.
and gentlemen. Buddy
Fight.
Michael Phelps is at home, clapping his hands. Can't believe how well these goggles were plopped on.
That does make the goggles quite a bit more impressive to suddenly have a 5/6 hexproof.
Yeah, it's a whole lot better. Down comes Dawn Feather Eagle, though. Speaking about impressive cards, we've been very impressed with the power level of this common here. Deceptively powerful, I would say, Dawn Feather Eagle.
Great role player.
Mm.
You don't build your deck around it, but at some point it becomes one of the best cards you can pick up.
Although in the face of this enormous 5/6 hexproof blocker here, the Dawn Feather Eagle's ability perhaps not at its best. Are we going to see an attack all the same?
think Yusuf-
Oh, yes. Get in there, mate. Get in there, he says.
For 5 points of damage, that's aggressive.
Well, away goes SRAM, the senior edificer, eaten up by the inventor.
5 is a good number though, because it puts Friedrich on a 3-turn clock in the air, where in game 1 not much was happening.
So Friedrich down to 9 now. So you can see here sacrificing some of his, one of his permanents, I should say, to push through those points of damage. A good observation, Simon, because this eagle at the moment ruling the skies uncontested. And the inventor comes across with his goggles firmly in place. And gives Vifa a bit of a spanking now for 5 damage. Oh, and look at this. An inventor once again picking up that pair of inventor's goggles, tapping. I mean, it says it on the card. It says it on the card. They're his goggles, mate. They're his goggles. Give him here, he says. Snatches them with all 6 of his fingers and plops them back on top of his head.
You can see in the picture he's not wearing them.
No, he's reaching out. He's saying, mate, you got my goggles. Give them here. Give them here.
Interesting decision here to turn the eagle into a 4/4, which on the surface does not change the clock at all.
We'll see if Vifa has a way to further the Eagles' power here, because at the moment, as you say, 3-turn clock beforehand, 3-turn clock right now, or 2 turns after this attack.
And we would only be seeing this next turn, of course, because there's no reason to invest something right now. It's just a little bit surprising to me, because the 1/1 cat would have also soaked up 5 points of damage.
Well, here we see another opportunity to soak up some damage with Vifa now playing out his Reservoir Walker. That's going to gain 3 energy, 3 life, and as a 3/3, I love the symmetry on this card. If only it cost 3, Simon.
Yeah, then I would like it better as well.
So the old ATSD Walker getting down. And it's going to stand in the way of Friedrich's next assault. He's got a 4/4, he's got a 5/6. Both of them have hexproof here. Vifa with a suspicious 1 mana left up. I think we know that he can't do too much with it here.
But if he has, for example, an alley evasion, he has it as a backup in his hand, for example, against a prey upon.
Well, Friedrich can, of course, is going to have to think about that as he continues. But we know that Vifa doesn't have anything of the sort, not even one in his drafted, but certainly on his opponent's mind.
The important fact is that alley evasion would threaten lethal next turn.
So in come the inventors.
You know what's a pet peeve of mine? When people tap their equipment when they attack with a creature.
Yeah, it's really tilting.
And now that there's improvise, you can actually, it's
it actually
it's
does
actually
matter.
relevant.
Yeah.
Finally.
Punishing those people who foolishly tap their equipment. Lifecraft Cavalry coming down as a 4/4. Does Vifa have a way to push through the final point of damage? He checks in with the top of his library. His deck is short on combat tricks, it is fair to say. The 4/4 comes across. It's going to knock Friedrich down to 1. Can Yusuf come up the ground from these huge, heavy-hitting heavyweights on Friedrich's sides of the battlefield here? And I think a servo is going to go a long way in doing that, of course. Those inventors, they don't have trample.
No, and that's the difference. That's the real difference. Why we prefer to see those leopards and those other cards.
SRAM comes down. SRAM 2.0.
Is one of them foil?
One of them is foil.
Yeah, the one he played in game 1 was non-foil.
non-foil.
So Friedrich should have been expecting number 2.
Yeah, he should have known there's another one coming down, and we see Vifa putting it down right now. So he's got the ground well and truly gummed up. He's on 9 life, so not the most secure position for him.
He's also... Oh, yeah, he's kind of threatening lethal even on the ground.
He absolutely is here with Friedrich recognizing the writing on the wall, and all of a sudden we are going to game 3. Things are really heating up here in the feature match area as Vifa equalizes at 1-1. Vifa and Friedrich here. Looks like Friedrich's going to take a quick break here, and Vifa might avail himself of the opportunity as well. So these two gentlemen getting their heads back in the game, maybe a couple of Japanese alarm clocks, and we'll see how we can get things going as they head back into the feature match area for game number 3. I didn't know exactly how much sideboarding went on for these two as they headed into game number 3. We didn't see too much of a change, Simon.
No. The Inventor's Goggles were already in the main deck?
And Inventor's Goggles already in the main deck there, as we can see as we look through the deck list here.
But as we saw, there isn't actually that much to bring in for both of these players.
No, these players, again, we've discussed slightly the fact that their lists aren't all that impressive, as it's I think it's a fair observation to make. Polovita Damodar Rosa, on the other hand, he's found his way all to the finals. He's done very well indeed to have such a ripper tournament. I mean, a player that really doesn't need too much of an introduction here. His reputation speaks for itself, and unsurprising to see him in the finals of another huge event here.
He'll have to buy another trophy case soon.
Yeah, he's 3rd or 4th, I would imagine. He's got all those swimming trophies from when he was a lad as well. All those bridge trophies as well.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. He does love playing bridge.
Okay, here we have a look at the top 8 bracket. And as you can see, Polovita Damodar Rosa already waiting in the finals. I can actually see him from here. He has been quite chatty. He demolished his opponent so quickly that he got a lot of breaks.
Talking of someone chatty, hi Simon, it's me, Rich Hagen.
Hello, Rich Hagen.
I wanted to come by and have a quick chat with you. The players, you're missing nothing on the tournament front right now. Both players are going to the bathroom in one of those delightful tournament weirdnesses, one after the other, because they're not allowed to go simultaneously. So there's like judges sort of rotating them through the restroom area. So we're still a few minutes away from the deciding game. Simon, what I wanted to ask you about, we are heading towards the Pro Tour in Dublin next week. And there are certainly some things with regard to Limited that we may not have the answer to yet, but there's certainly some questions that I now know need answering.
Absolutely.
So here's one off the bat. When implements were first given to the public, it's fair to say the response was super negative. Who wants these? What are these? None of the effects do anything. How expensive? It's a whole card, and yes, you get it back, but it's going to take forever. Haven't they turned out to be really good this weekend?
Yes, really good support cards. And that's what you have to expect from a card that replaces itself. You can't get much more than that. And how many times have we seen those create additional +1/+1 counters? We've seen them generate -3/-3 effects. It's just all these revolt triggers and artifact synergies are really adding up.
One of the things that seems to be happening, and this is just from a few online drafts so far, because it turns out there was a GP this weekend, so I was quite busy. But it seems to me that the role of artifacts has really changed from when it was triple Kaladesh. In Kaladesh, you'd play a Fragmentize in every deck without even thinking about it, because of course you were going to have either an okay target, a good target, or a great target. And in addition to your one compulsory, as it were, Fragmentize, you would play one other artifact/enchantment. You would very happily appetite away. But it seems to me now that in draft in this new format, almost no one has artifacts. There are any number of 40-card lists with 0 artifacts in.
Yeah, I would put it a little bit differently.
Okay.
You will still find targets for these effects, but they are not usually the cards you want to target. They're not the cards you need to kill. So even if I'm playing against an opponent who has a bunch of servo tokens or maybe the occasional Thopter, maybe an implement, none of these cards will win the game for them.
Mhm.
So if I trade my Fragmentize for a 2-mana artifact that was just lying around, I'm not really getting my cards worth.
Okay. Not just on the implements, but more generally, it looks to me as if there is a lot of what I might call circular stuff going on. Kaladesh was all about swirling patterns on a philosophical and flavor level. Swirling patterns and this idea of invent this and so on. In a sense, Ether Revolt seems to have taken that one step further, in that the number of times you see, yes, here's a green implement, and I'm going to put a +1/+1 counter on there, but then it turns out that that +1/+1 counter is quite important for Armorcraft Judge, which is going to draw me a couple of cards, and I'm going to make this Renegade Rallier, and I'm going to bring back this implement, which then puts a +1/+1 counter on a Scrounging Bandar, which had already gone down to 1 counter, but now it's back up to 2 counters, and now it can put 2 counters on this Foundry Hornet, and
Winding Constrictor and so on and so on.
Yeah, yes. Now, Winding Constrictor, it was clearly known that was going to be a constructed card coming into the Pro Tour, and we've seen already in constructed decks at the last couple of weeks. But it's possibly one of the best cards in the set, isn't it? It leads to so many. The only word I have for it is absurd.
Yeah,
game
absolutely
states.
absurd. And these are the games that feel really unbeatable. And to go back to your swirling patterns, we know from the storyline that this is now the revolution happening. So
Mhm.
it's a lot less controlled environment, if you want. And it feels to me that some of the build around cards and interactions that we see, that we also saw this weekend, that we will see next week, it's a certain liberation, it's a certain breaking free, right? The swirling patterns are not funneled as precisely, as controlled as in Kaladesh, but instead you see crazy interactions that you hadn't even thought about. And it suddenly, you can mix and match whatever you want because the rules are just not a bait anymore.
Yes, and I think a good example of that is a card like Renegade Freighter, because any number of games in Kaladesh Limited were won by just, here's a Renegade Freighter, I crew it, I hit you for 5, I crew it, I hit you for 5. You're struggling to deal with it, eventually you deal with it, but you 2-for-1'd yourself, having already taken a pile of damage from it, and that made a lot of difference. But, we're in business. Hey, I'm not qualified to talk about Game 3 of a semi-final. I'm going to leave you here, and you can have Riley Knight back from England to Australia in less than 10 seconds. Take it away, Simon.
Thank you, Rich, for this little intervention. Fabian is on the play, of course, for Game 3 as Riley is coming back into the booth, and we will see once again if the dockhand will have a significant impact on this game.
No, the mighty dockhand turning things around. It wasn't long after the dockhand was activated last time that Vifa scooped up his card, so Zimon, we could see some decisive action coming as a part of this Merchant's dockhand here. So both of these players now getting off to the races. Looks like Vifa has a play on turn number 2. It's the Gear Shift Ace once again.
Big fan of first strikers in general.
Mm-hmm.
If you have multiple of them, they are great on defense, and if you have combat tricks, power boosting effects, amazing cards on offense as well.
They just line up with what's going on in this format, I think, just so well, sitting back and defending and looking pretty there on defense. But then if you want to get on the front foot, it makes blocking a nightmare for your opponent.
And suddenly, almost all the abilities and cards that are good in this format are somehow related to creature combat. So Trample and First Strike are just the two core abilities that make it more difficult to plan ahead, to think about what will happen in the next combat step.
Yeah, look, I think there's been some really important lessons that we've learnt this weekend, as we see Gear Shift Ace here going up against the Merchant's Dockhand, and it's going to be taken apart here by once again, one of these combat tricks that you were talking about, Zimon.
Yeah, Ornamental Courage. Maybe not at its best here. Trading Ornamental Courage for a 2/1 first striker almost seems a little bit weak to me. you haven't really gained all that much. But if Fabian was looking at a hand that wouldn't have a blocker for a 2-power first striker, it's, oh my god.
Oh, jeez, look at this. Here comes the beatings will commence until morale continues, says Fabian Friedrich, entering his trump card into play. With the Bastion Inventor, we've seen these cards dominate the last couple of board states, and I think this is no different here. Bastion Inventor, a 4/4 hexproof that comes down for 4 mana. I mean, that's such a great deal.
And this is what I meant when I said that I like Friedrich's deck more. Like this, of course, it's exceptional to have this on turn 4, but at the same time, he has 2 of them. He has built his deck to support these inventors as much as possible.
Yeah, he's left like, sort of quote unquote better cards in the board in order to beef up his deck. Cards like Silkweaver Elite, easier to cast, higher upside when you're drawing a card with that sort of thing. But this is where he wants to be. He wants to be beating down with huge blue and green beaters, and he's doing exactly that.
But for that, you have to understand that a 4/4 hexproof is actually quite good in this blue-green deck, even though it doesn't have a clear-cut synergy. It's not like you're playing 10 artifacts. It's not like you're the only thing you want to achieve is getting a 4/4 hexproof onto the battlefield. But still, the effect it has on the overall flow of the game, that's what really counts here.
Friedrich now tapping down the Ether Herder. And we're going to see Vifa now. What has he got? Tapping a single forest. And it's going to be a Prey Upon. A Prey Upon making the 3/3 fight the 2/3 here. And that's a nice way to answer that Ether Stream Leopard, which could have been very problematic for Vifa here. Yeah,
it doesn't get much better than that. If you can trade 1 mana for your opponent's 2/3 creature, I'm afraid that Yusuf does not have a white card to cast. It looks from his mana, it looks that this Prey Upon cost him a whole turn.
We've already seen that his deck is severely lacking when it comes to the combat tricks that you would expect out of a green and white deck, and we haven't seen things like Alley Evasion. We don't have to play around cards like Built to Last when it comes to fighting off Vifa's onslaughts here. So he may be sitting with just some roast potatoes in hand here without anything to bring to the table.
Yeah, and here Fabian is just running out the cavalry, 4/4 trample for 5. You don't always have to trigger Revolt.
No, I mean, it's still a fine card if you're going to play it like that. Again, it reminds me, I made this observation before, reminds me of the old Rocks Maulers from Magic Origins. That card certainly pulled its weight here. And obviously the upside is very high if you can bring it down as a 6/6 to begin with. But if it gets caught in the brights, it's all the same. And that's exactly what happens here with Vifa. And he's got another Prey Upon. Or he recognizes and respects the power of the Merchant Stockhand, Simon.
Apparently he does. Nice fact that caught in the brights allows for the attack here. He really wanted that 1/1 server. I'm sure it will do something this game. And if it only soaks up 4 damage, that's still a free 4 life you're gaining.
Yeah, for sure. Play a 4 mana 3/3, gain 4 life. I mean, that's not a bad card, and that's not an unreasonable thing to expect here for Vifa. Struggling with mana a little bit by the look of things. Now, Simon, I did get the chance to have a chat with Friedrich between rounds here, and he did tell me his sideboard